Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in What's on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through WealthCare Asset Management, LLC.
It's time for What's on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Hello and welcome into the show. All the volatility we've seen over the past few weeks might mean some big opportunities you won't want to miss. Today on this Sunday's What's on Wealth radio show, Barry will share some ways savvy investors can turn uncertainty into an advantage, why the right guidance could be the key to making all that happen. I know you're going to want to be with us for the whole hour. Alongside Barry Watts of Springfield's WealthCare Corporation, I'm your host, Ralph Hipp, as we enjoy another great spring in Springfield, getting ready for summer. Barry's done some traveling lately, but he always says 'tis a privilege to live in the Ozarks, and it's good to have you home, Barry, and how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Ralph. Tell them where you got that 'tis a privilege. Tell them why you said that, because most of our listeners don't know.
Well, we've mentioned it, I think, 2 or 3 times, and if you're a reader, which is also debatable.
No. Tell them why you said that. What is it that brings that to your mind?
The first thing that I think of in discussing that, it's the banner on the Springfield.
No. Why did you think to say that? Why did you associate with that with me?
Not with the paper. When you travel and you have all kinds of exciting times and you learn all kinds of things and you teach all kinds of fascinating things and you go and you see the world and you see the country. But you told me, not the newspaper banner, but you told me when you're flying into Springfield Regional Airport and you just see the countryside, you get kind of a peace and a serenity of knowing that you're back home. And that's the other part of when you think.
We may take the whole hour to figure this out, but I'm really going to get to the bottom of it. So, Ralph, what is it that causes you to associate that phrase, and that phrase, 'tis a privilege to live in the Ozarks? Why do you associate that phrase with me?
Well,
it's because of what you see on Facebook. Because every time I land the plane, I don't land the plane. We have a pilot that does that.
I was on the right flight path, though.
Yeah, you were on the right flight path, but you were going to land sideways on the airstrip. So every time I land in Springfield, I'm always flying American Eagle, which is, by the way, a bad experience for me, but that's a topic for another day. So I'm always flying American Eagle. And so I always post, the Eagle has landed. Of course, that's what they said when the first, what was it? When the
Apollo 11.
Apollo 11 landed.
I remember you saying that.
On the moon. They said the Eagle has landed. So I always post on Facebook every time I get home, literally as the wheels hit the runway, I always post, the Eagle has landed. 'Tis a privilege to live in the Ozarks.
Yeah.
And what you were trying to say there with that regard to that, where 'tis a privilege, is the banner to I believe it was back in the days of the Leader and Press, when Springfield was a 2-newspaper town. Do you remember that? Were we a 2-newspaper town when you got here, Ralph, or were you already one newspaper by then?
Yeah, I was late 80s when I moved to Springfield, and it was always the Springfield News Leader.
All right, well, so in the old days, we had the Leader and Press and the News Leader, and one of them was a morning paper, and one of them was an afternoon paper. I'm not sure which one was which. We always got the afternoon paper. I think that was the Springfield.
Which was, longer. That was a common occurrence. You had your morning and afternoon.
Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine producing 2 papers a day? Oh, my goodness. That's just quite incredible. But anyway, the banner to the newspaper always said, 'tis a privilege to live in the Ozarks. And so because I'm an old guy and I've lived in the Ozarks a long time, and I used to read the paper back when they could get it delivered to me. That went away about 10 years ago. I can't even get it delivered hardly anymore. But long story short is 'tis a privilege to live in the Ozarks is an embodiment of what I truly feel, because when the plane does get low, over Springfield Branson National Airport, Ralph, you called it Springfield Regional. So you're showing your age there. It's Springfield Branson National.
They're national.
And has been for like 20 years, by the way. But I always have this emotional reaction to that. No matter where I've been, and I go to some beautiful places. And no matter what I've seen, and I see some wonderful things, it all comes back to cows crunching on green grass in the Ozarks, where it's easy, where I've got an easy trip to go get in my car and drive it back across the James River Freeway and 60 Highway to Rogersville and park it at the farm. Now, it happened that this week, most recently on my trip, I was in Chicago, and it was a mess with a capital M. It took me, bite on this now, it took me 9 hours and 15 minutes.
I saw that.
To go from the front door of my house in Rogersville to my hotel room in Chicago, 9 hours and 15 minutes, and that's flying.
Yeah.
It took me almost 3 hours to go from O'Hare Airport downtown to my hotel, which is normally like a 30, 35-minute trip. So it was just a terrible, terrible experience, honestly. And that's why you see me saying things like, oh, it is a privilege to live in the Ozarks, because things just pretty well go smoothly here in the Ozarks. And that's the way we like it. And we want to keep it that way if at all possible.
'Tis a privilege to be able to get back to the Ozarks, is probably your saying for this week.
You know, It always is, Ralph. I think I've told you before, I work with people all around the country. And some of them in kind of highfalutin places, you know, with the people who've got big credentials from Ivy League schools and have big words and all that kind of stuff. And as we engage in consulting agreements with them, one of the things that comes out of that is they will often say to me, Barry, why aren't you in New York? You know, in New York, what you just said. I had one lady tell me one time, she said, Barry, what you just said, they'll pay $10,000 an hour for in New York. I'm like, I would love to be paid $10,000 an hour.
That's
Please
crazy.
sign me up. But you need to understand, I'm going to bed every night in Springfield. Well, not in Springfield, actually. I said I'm going to bed in Rogersville. And so, you know, all that fancy, highfalutin, important, busy world commerce kind of stuff is kind of nice and interesting. But at the end of the day, the peace and quiet on my own farm, where I can look out over the cows, and where this morning when I drove out, my golden retriever was laying out on the front lawn in front of the house, enjoying the sunshine. I'm like, this is home. It's where I want to be. There's just no place like the Ozarks. I love it here.
Very good. Barry, now that you are home, and I was going to ask you this question anyway, you're so widely respected in Springfield financial advisor circles and whatever the airport. Regionally, you're respected. Nationally, I believe you're well respected. And what did you learn and what did you share in your meetings in Chicago? And my addendum question there, is there anything new in the world of retirement financial planning, or is everyone pretty much sticking to the basic concepts? But what did you learn and what did you share?
Oh my goodness. I want to share more significantly what I learned than what I shared, because I think you need to always let your learning exceed your knowledge. And the particular meeting that I was in centered around the idea of protected principal, because for retirees, there's nothing more important than not losing your principal. And so it happened that a lot of the meeting I was in the conversation was centered around strategies for protecting principal. And I will tell you that this particular meeting I was in, one of the strategies that we talked about and unpacked was the one that when the market is positive, you get to participate in the market, whatever positive it is. And when the market is negative, you get to participate in the market positively, the inverse of however much it's negative. Meaning that if the market goes down 5%, you get a positive 5% return. Now, does that cause you to scratch your head for just a minute? It ought to. So this particular strategy, you ask if there's anything new. Well, this is not really new, but it's packaged up in a way that it comes new to most of our retirees in Southwest Missouri. This particular strategy, if the market's positive, you get paid whatever the upside of the market is. If the market's negative, you get paid the inverse of that. So the positive number by however much it's negative down to a certain level. And let's just say that level is 20%. I'm making this up now. It's all true, but I'm just trying to share a concept. Let's say that the market is down 20%. Well, you would be totally protected down to that 20%. And if the market went down 21%, then you would only lose 1% while the market lost 21%. So that was the new strategy that we unpacked in this particular meeting that I happened to be in Chicago. Those are game-changing things for our clients because I think it's so important that we have a don't lose money focus. And yet, usually not losing money means putting your money somewhere where it doesn't earn as well. Well, in this case, you can earn market rates of return. And I just am excited about that. If I can earn market rates of return and be protected on the downside, that's something I really want to participate in. And on this particular trip, that's the concept that I was being taught. And so we're bringing that back, and we're looking at how to add that to our portfolios for our retiree clients. And I think it'll be helpful in the long run. So thanks for asking the question about what I learned, Ralph. That's what I was focused on this particular trip. Something I heard, by the way, in the airport in O'Hare last night as I was trying to load up was about the cardboard box index. Have you ever heard of the cardboard box index?
No. What is that, Barry?
Well, it's a measurement. It's a measurement of how successful the economy is, how healthy the economy is. So here's what really happened. I invented the word cardboard box index, but it's appropriate. There's a company in Springfield called Westrock, and they make cardboard boxes. It's out on West Scenic, I believe is where it's located. And I happened to be flying in with a guy who works for Westrock. They're opening a new plant up in Wisconsin. And so he was flying home. He lived down in Harrison. And he was telling me all about it. And he said that their business was considered a leading indicator of the economy. When people are buying more cardboard boxes, it means more stuff is being shipped via Amazon, for example, through UPS and FedEx. And so what he said is, based on the orders for cardboard boxes, we kind of know what to expect out of the economy. And he said, I have to tell you, Mr. Finance Man, orders for cardboard boxes are down. So I don't know if he knows what he's talking about. And I don't know that one indicator like that changes the game. But it's interesting for us to note that the cardboard box index currently says that the economy is faltering a little bit, weakening a little bit. And that's one of the other things that I learned. See, it's just amazing what you can learn just standing in line at the airport, waiting to get on the plane.
Sure,
I learned about the cardboard box index, and now everybody in Southwest Missouri has the opportunity to learn about that.
That's a good comparison there, Barry. And it kind of ties in going the other way about when you choose a financial advisor. We had that conversation of how do you pick the best one, and the reference to the restaurant. Look where all the cars are. Look where all the people are in the parking lot, because that's the place to go to eat. So kind of the same thing on the other side, the restaurant parking lot index. And you are listening to Watts on Wealth, the radio show. Hope you've seen Barry and me on TV. We're on all the Springfield TV stations on Sunday morning, along with the radio show right here on KSGF. So to also get a copy of Barry's book, his number, 417-200-3500. It's 417-200-3500. Set up a chat with Barry and get his book, Watts on Wealth. We'll take a break and be back with more of our show in just a moment for this Sunday, right after this.
Concerned about your retirement plans? Barry Watts can guide you to a confident retirement. Set up a meeting by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will your roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a pretty good run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather a financial storm? Now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare at 417-200-3500 now. They'll examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare today at 417-200-3500 to get your no-obligation second opinion. Don't let your retirement get caught in the rain. Call 417-200-3500. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk.
Picture your first day of retirement. What does it look like? Let's make that dream a reality. Start with Barry Watts' Wealth Care Kit. It includes vital information on the biggest retirement challenges. To get your kit, text KIT to 417-200-3500. That's KIT to 417-200-3500.
Welcome back into more Watts on Wealth this beautiful Sunday morning in the Ozarks, along with J. Barry Watts, the main retirement wealth designer for Springfield's Wealthcare Corporation. This is Ralph Hipp, and we're alongside with Matt Dean, whom we'll meet in just a moment here, Barry. But first of all, let's get a copy of your book into the hands of as many people around the Ozarks as we can. We can text the word BOOK. We can call the number. And would you elucidate how we get a copy of Watts on Wealth to go with reading and the TV show and the radio show?
Ralph, I love it when you ask me to elucidate. Boy, that's a $50 word right there.
It is.
Happy to elucidate how one can get a copy of my book, Watts on Wealth. All you got to do. You can go to Amazon, buy it if you want to. But if you will just ask us, we'll send you a copy free. All you've got to do is text the word book, B-O-O-K, book. Text that to 417-200-3500. 417-200-3500. If you'll text the word book, we will put an autographed copy of it in the mail to you. There are other educational avenues that we use, of course. So we've got our television show. You can still catch the show this morning, but it's on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox here in Springfield on Sunday morning. So you can catch it in lots of different places. And then we've got our YouTube site. If you go to YouTube and just type in Watts on Wealth, WATTS on Wealth, we've got probably 20 or 30 videos over there about a variety of financial and retirement related things. And that's a good place for you to find an educational approach to figuring out what you need to know in order to be able to retire with confidence, because that's what we try to help people do here at the Wealthcare Corporation is retire with confidence.
Yes.
And one of the people that we have, Ralph, whose job is to inspire that confidence. Well, you met him here previously. Do you remember Matt Dean?
I do. That was a terrific show, Barry, and I'm glad he's back for more. We talked about all kinds of Medicare issues.
He is here in the studio.
Yeah.
Matt just snuck in, so he's here for this segment, and I'm glad to have him. Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show, Barry. It's glad to be back.
We're always glad that you're here. Matt is a retirement designer with the Wealthcare Corporation.
Yep, that's right.
And so that means he takes all the principles that are in our book and on our TV show and radio show and on our YouTube channel, and he customizes those principles and applies them to the clients that he helps and serves. And so when people come to see us, they will get one of our advisors, and one of the advisors they may get is Matt Dean. Matt, we started the show earlier talking a little bit about travel. You've been traveling recently. Where have you been?
I had been to Lawrence, Kansas in the past weekend for little brother's graduation from the University of Kansas, Rock Jock Jayhawk.
Roar like a tiger. Those of us who went to Mizzou don't really appreciate your Jayhawk talk there, but I understand your brother didn't have any better sense than to go to Kansas to school. So we'll accept that. It's okay. They have pretty colors.
Well, thank you for your kindness.
I like the red and blue and so forth. So your brother graduated out there and you went to graduation to be with him.
That's exactly right. If the folks listening in could see me here in the studio, I've got a little bit of a flaky sunburn on my forehead from sitting in Memorial Stadium for the better part of 3 hours.
What kind of degree did you get out there?
He got a veterinary biology degree.
Oh, so is he going to go to vet school?
Yep, that's the plan here in about a year or so.
And your daddy's a doctor and your mama works in the health sciences field as well. You're kind of the weirdo. You came over to the finance side.
Yeah, well, I've got I get queasy to the stomach if I see too much blood or a broken bone. So I still love dealing with people, but just not on the health side.
I understand very well. Now let's talk a little bit about your background and where you come from and so forth. First of all, you came to us, how many years ago? How long have you been here?
About 3 years ago,
Yeah, so you came 3 years ago, fresh out of Missouri State University with the degree in?
Personal financial planning.
Oh, okay. So you were already down the road in terms of finance, and then you came into our firm, and we kind of helped you brush up the details on that and figure out how to apply it in practice.
That's exactly right.
Well, that's great. And so today, tell me what you do. How do you help people? What's your job?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I just got off the phone with a client who needed to start their Medicare benefits. So I was walking them through an application to get started with not just Medicare, but also Social Security, and then hopped right into the studio.
Okay. Well, so that's why we call you Medicare Matt some days.
Exactly.
Now, do you only deal with Medicare and Social Security?
No. I deal with every facet when it comes to retirement planning out income all the way to age 100, optimizing the sort of risk that folks are taking with their retirement savings, tax strategy work, you name it.
Okay. Well, so you're doing everything that's involved in holistic retirement planning.
That's exactly correct.
Now, Matt, I remember when you first came here 3 years ago, we had kind of an interesting thing happened because you'd been hired on. I didn't hire you. Somebody else did. So I show up and here you are. And I'm like, who's this guy? What's the deal? And okay, I guess I'll live with him for a while. And after about 3 days, you came to me with kind of a peculiar announcement. Do you remember what it was?
So, Barry, I heard you were from Galena.
You did. You did. You brought up my roots in Stone County. I said, yes, I am. And what we found out is that I have known your family at kind of a distance for a long time. So your grandpa, what's his name?
George Scott.
George Scott. Your grandpa, George Scott, is a retired judge from the state of Kansas.
Yes.
And he retired back home where he grew up into Stone County on the farm there. In fact, the way you find where grandpa lives is you go on 248 like you were going to take 248 out to Cape Fair.
Yep.
But just at the top of the hill in Galena, you turn left like you were going down to Rolly Blancs. That's where all the fishermen will know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And but you don't have to go that far. If you turned an immediate left again, it would take you to the Galena Cemetery. And somewhere between the cemetery and Rolly Blancs is where Grandpa George Scott's farm is, down on the James River. Even today, that's where he and your grandma live.
Yes, and your family's farm was just a hop and a skip up the river, right?
Actually, across the river.
Yep.
And so it's very interesting. When I was a kid growing up, your Uncle Jerry, I knew who he was. We saw him around town all the time. He drove a red International pickup. Did you tell me Grandpa still got that pickup?
Yeah. Yep.
That's kind of funny. That was a classy truck, as I recall. I mean, it was an old truck then. It's an older truck now, but it's the kind of truck that would really shine up beautifully. Don't let that get away from the family.
No.
All right. Well, that's the introduction of Matt. So you'll know a little bit more about him and how he came to be in our practice. One of the things I wanted to talk about on the show today is the credit score of the United States. Matt, do you have a personal credit score?
I do.
Oh, do you know what it is? Don't tell us, but do you know what your score is?
Yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Oh, okay. Well, very, very good. So the United States has a credit score as well, and I'm going to talk about how that comes, but I want to frame it in terms of everybody understanding their own personal credit score. Mm-hmm. So do you know, now I'm testing you here, do you know what the credit scoring agencies are for individuals?
It's FICO, isn't it?
Well, yes. So that's what they call the score is your FICO score, but what are the names of the agencies that actually issue those scores?
Oh, Barry, you're going to have to tell me.
Yeah, sorry. Well, it's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Those are the three major credit score companies. And when they give you a score, now here's another test question for you. Do you know what the top possible score is?
Isn't it 800 or 850?
850 is the top possible score. And at what point, if I'm below 850, when am I getting in danger? Do you know? When is it like, oh, dude, your credit sucks really badly?
Oh, 600s?
Well, yeah, I was going to say 500, but yeah, between 500 and 600, you're kind of in trouble. 700, you're really good.
Yep.
Down 500, we probably got a lot of work we need to do. You're not going to get good interest rates.
And 750 would be excellent.
750 would be really good, yeah. And then if you get over 800, even better. So the United States has always been a company that not a company, the credit rating, not the credit score, but the credit rating of the United States has always been superb, fabulous, fantastic, AAA rated until recently. And you may have heard that Moody's, one of the scoring agencies for big companies that also rates the United States, Moody's has dropped the credit rating for the United States of America. Did you hear about that?
Oh my goodness, yes, I did. Did it lower for S&P as well?
It's very serious. No, they didn't. Moody's was catching up to S&P. In fact, Fitch dropped their credit rating in 2023, so it took Moody's another 2 years to come up with that in 2025. But S&P actually dropped the credit rating way back in 2011. They were reading the tea leaves a lot earlier. And so the credit rating dropped from AAA down to AA1. Which is just a lower score. And you know, historically, Matt, the reason people loved CDs, for example, is because of the AAA credit rating in the United States. Mm-hmm. AAA is as high as it can be. That people bought CDs because they were backed by the FDIC, which is an agency of the federal government, and that's as secure as it could be. And the message that's coming through here from the credit rating agencies is maybe the government backing up your CDs isn't as solid as you thought it was.
So was the thinking that the CDs that I have at the bank might have more risk than I thought they did?
Well, I think they do have more risk perhaps than you thought they did. And what Fitch is saying about this, or Moody's rather, I should say, is saying about this, is they're saying that the fiscal deficits and the interest rate costs that the United States is enduring is why they have lowered those particular ratings. And so Moody's looked at it and said, hey, U.S., you're not doing very good. And so what did the U.S. Congress go out and do? They just had a vote here a few days ago where they said, well, why don't we add another $3 trillion onto the debt? And so they're just piling on more of the problem that will cause the credit rating to go down further and further and further. Now, the White House blames this all on Joe Biden. And they say, it's all Biden's fault. And they actually criticized Moody's for being so slow and doing their downgrade now instead of back during Biden's term. You know what I think about that, Matt?
You think it started much earlier than just Biden?
Yeah, I mean, there's no score. There's no blessing for Biden in this. He's certainly guilty. Culpable, I believe, would be the technical term. But there's plenty of blame to go around. The Republicans are just as bad. You know, it was the Republicans who voted recently to increase the debt by another $3 trillion.
And it wasn't the first time that they've done it either.
Over and over and over and over again. And this is why our credit rating for the country has gone down. And the stock market has responded to that. It really responded with a set of stumbles because you would have thought that the economy was in good shape overall. But these little bits of news, like the downgrade in the credit rating, are causing the market and the economy to ask questions. And even the tax cut package that Trump has proposed that is working its way through the Congress now and is a little closer to getting accomplished. The tax cut package is causing some concerns as well because they're adding more debt in the process of cutting taxes. So I think there's a lot to worry about and be concerned about here. I think the far right-hand side that is pushing for more tax cuts and less spending, I think they're right. And I think they've done a decent job of holding the speaker's feet to the fire. But as it's turning out, it's appearing that some of our Republican brethren may not be as focused on harnessing the government as they need to be. And the great concern about that is if we don't get a handle on this, if we don't get our hands around this, not only are we going to see credit rating of the United States continue to be reduced, we're going to see interest rates continue to rise. And the reason that's bad is because the U.S. owes so much money. What is it now? About
$37 trillion?
Yeah, $37 trillion that they're having to pay interest on at higher and higher rates. And at some point, the government's not going to have enough money to pay that interest. And so the government has to get more money. Where are they going to get it?
Taxes.
They have to raise taxes. And they're going to raise taxes on the wonderful people who listen to What's on Wealth, the radio show. And so those are the people we want to help at the Wealth Care Corporation. In fact, Matt, one of the things we can help them do is reduce their taxes in retirement. We had some clients in last week who they're in their late 60s. By the time they're 71 years old, they'll be in the 0% tax bracket, paying no taxes on Social Security, paying no taxes on any of the income that they receive, and they'll be in the lowest Medicare bracket for the rest of their lifetime because they did retirement tax planning.
I was just going to mention those are not the only folks that we're doing that kind of work for. In fact, we've got a good handful of folks that are slotted to have the 0% tax bracket in just a matter of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's not just a good handful. About a third of our client base is going to the 0% tax bracket. So if you'd like to join that third and move it toward a half, and you want to get to the 0% tax bracket in retirement, what you need to do is you need to start by visiting our office here at the Wealth Care Corporation. If you'll just pick up your phone and dial us, you can communicate with us that way, and we will set an appointment when we can visit with you. You can visit with one of our advisors, and we'll get you started in the process. 417-200-3500. You're listening to What's on Wealth.
You are indeed. And give Barry a call, text visit today or call tomorrow. Once again, it's 417-200-3500 right here in Springfield, Missouri. Time for a break and more of our show coming up. You're listening to What's on Wealth, the radio show.
Uncertain about your retirement future? Let Barry Watts help you retire with certainty. Schedule a meeting by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. Retirement planning made simple with Barry Watts. His kit includes a retirement income planning booklet, plus information on taxes, Social Security, and more. Get your Wealth Care Kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
Welcome back to What's on Wealth. This is Barry Watts from the Wealth Care Corporation. Our show is called What's on Wealth. We help people retire confidently. And we do that in part through the education that we provide here on our radio show. I've got with me in the studio today one of our retirement designers, Matt Dean. And he and I are going to help you walk through thinking about a lot of things about retirement. One of the first things that we want to talk about today is what wealthy people do differently than everyone else. So, Matt, if you were just going down the street, doing one of those man on the street interviews and putting a microphone in front of people and saying, what do wealthy people do differently than everybody else? What do you think the average person on the street would say?
Oh, well, they must have better investments.
Yeah, well, maybe so. I don't know. Yeah, somebody asked this question of Scott Bessent. You know who Scott Bessent is?
No, remind me.
He's the Secretary of the Treasury.
Oh, yeah.
He's Trump's head money guy. And Scott Bessent recently said the key to financial independence, yes, that's it, financial. The key to financial independence, sorry, sometimes my tongue gets tangled. The key to financial independence is financial literacy and making good financial choices. It comes from more financial education. That's what Scott Bessent had to say. And of course, that's why we at WealthCare are so focused on financial education, because we agree with Bessent. And, I think he must be right, because he's got a net worth of about $500 million. And I got to tell you, we've never seen anybody in our practice worth $500 million.
I'm afraid not.
To my knowledge, I can only think of one person in Springfield who is a billionaire. And of course, at that level, they have their money managed mostly out of New York because they think that's where all the experts are. That doesn't necessarily prove to be true. But Bessent has $500 million, and he accumulated that by managing a hedge fund. So he was a money manager for many years. And so we don't expect that our work's going to make you a $500 millionaire like Scott Bessent, but we hope it'll allow you to retire comfortably and confidently. And that's through our educational process. We teach Social Security and Medicare classes all the time, usually over at the Library Center. We've got the book, What's on Wealth, the YouTube channel, What's on Wealth on YouTube. And routinely, we teach some retirement courses over at MSU. So that's how we try to add to this educational concept. Have you ever read Ramit Sethi's book?
Ramit Sethi.
Ramit.
Yeah.
Paul, sorry, I'm from Southwest Missouri. We're going to call it Ramit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you're more educated. But anyway, what's the name of the book? Do you remember?
Oh, no. I thought he has a couple of books.
Well, he may have. The one that I'm aware of is I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Isn't that an interesting name to a book?
He also had a Netflix show, How to Be Rich or How to Get Rich, something like that.
Well, here's what he says in his book. He says that people are too busy asking $3 questions instead of $30,000 questions. So here's an example. He said that you need to be asking, what is my savings rate and can I increase it by 1% per year? Instead of asking, can I do without a tall latte caramel macchiato?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think it's a good idea to reduce those at $7 a crack too. But his point was, what's my savings rate currently? So think about that in your head. How much are you saving currently? Ask your kids, how much are you guys saving? What percentage of your income are you saving? And then ask them this, can you increase it by just 1% per year? Now, here's something interesting, Matt. I did a little math for us. If you're saving just $500 a month and you do that for 40 years at 8% interest, you're going to have $1.7 million by the time you reach age 65. Just $500 a month. But if you increase it by 1% per year, when you reach age 65, you'll have $2.2 million.
Oh my goodness.
Instead of 1.7, an extra $500,000 by just making a 1% increase in how much you're saving. Can you make a 1% increase in anything? Matt, could you eat 1% less calories?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I should.
Well, I wouldn't go there. But could you exercise 1% more?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Matt, could you pray 1% longer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, could you give 1% more to charity?
Yeah, on a good month.
Let me ask you this. Could you love your wife 1% more?
Every single day.
Yeah, well, no, the right answer to that was no. I couldn't love her any more than I possibly do now. I love her to the max.
No, you're right about
but
that.
But could you demonstrate it 1% more?
Of course.
Yeah, you absolutely could. So 1% more isn't very hard. And Mr. Sethi, in his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, he focuses on those kind of questions. And the truth is, Matt, that most of our listeners are educated folks and have got kids who are doing well, and those young people can afford $500 per month. And we know they can afford it because they choose to make car payments and phone payments, and they could choose to save if they wanted to save. So the issue is, what are you saving now? Could you increase 1% a month? Another thing that he suggests is this: what's my debt-free payoff date? Exactly what month and what year will I be debt-free? He says everybody should know when that is. Another thing he suggested is know when you're going to hit $1 million. What's your journey? At what point in your life, what age will you have $500,000? Will you have $1 million, and so forth? And when will you be able to retire? Now we're getting into your territory,
Oh, yeah.
Matt. Because the issue of when we're going to be able to retire relates to what step in the retirement process.
Mhm.
No, I'm asking, what's the name of the step?
Income to age 100.
Yeah. So, and in order to know whether or not you've got enough to retire, what do you have to know about income to age 100?
Whether you're going to have income to age 100 for starters.
Yeah, but how do I know if I'm going to have income to age 100?
You got to take a look at what eligible Social Security benefits you're going to have every month, how much income you can produce from your assets on a monthly basis. You got to know what your expenses are after taxes.
All right. So what's the magic question, though? We ask this question in our practice all the time. Have I blanked you on this one, Matt?
I'm afraid so.
What's your sitting on the porch number?
Exactly right.
How much, now that I've reminded you, help me understand, what is your sitting on the porch number? What's that mean?
If the only thing you had to do in retirement was sit on the porch every month, how much would it take for you to pay all the bills and do the things that you'd like to do?
Well, that's exactly what it means. And so the whole point is you ought to be thinking now about what your sitting on the porch number is. And I don't know if it's $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, whatever it happens to be. Pick your number now. And even if you're 25 or 30 years old, you can actually build a retirement plan based on today's sitting on the porch number. And you can plan strategically to have that particular number when you get where you want to be. And if you're not earning enough living right now, and you want a higher sitting on the porch number, that's fine. Pick a higher number because you can plan to achieve the higher number. And so if you'll start planning early enough, it makes an incredible difference because early planning allows early savings. And Matt, why is it important to start saving earlier than later in life?
Well, when time is on your side, you can have dollars that accumulate more dollars.
Yeah, because of the power of compounding.
That's right.
So if you put $1 in today and it's got 40 years to compound versus you put $1 in 30 years and it's got 10 years to compound, the powerful compounding of those dollars over time will be significantly greater the sooner you put those dollars to work. Last question, which is, what's your rich life? Be specific. Around the Wealth Care Corporation, we don't ask people what their rich life is, but we do ask a similar question using the artistry of a famous painter. What is that question?
Norman Rockwell.
Yeah, Norman Rockwell is our guy. And we tell them that we're going to hire old Norman to come in and sit with them, and Norman is going to paint a picture of their retirement. And so we say to them, tell us what you're going to have Norman paint in your retirement. The best answer I've ever received came quickly from a guy who, when I said, tell me what Norman's going to paint in your retirement, they said, my suitcase is packed and by the front door, because travel was what they wanted in retirement. Now, a lot of times people will say things like, well, in retirement, I see my children, my grandkids gathered around. I see a big table full of food. And I see a lake and there's some fishing going on. They will say, I see some travel. And then we have a follow-up question. Where are you going to travel? Well, I'd like to go here. I had some clients in the other day who wanted to go to Switzerland. I was in Switzerland within the past month and I was telling them about it. It turns out their people are from Switzerland, though they've never been. And they wanted to go, but they didn't know if they had enough money. And by the way, they had enough money, but because they've retired, they've gotten suddenly cautious. And I had to sit down with them and go over the money again, go over the math with them and show them they could afford to go to Switzerland. So in their case, what we did is we actually showed them if in 2027 they chose to spend $20,000 on a trip to Switzerland, we showed them what difference it was going to make in their life.
And here's the beauty of that plan, Barry, is having a plan can show you the progress that you're making towards your different goals. How far are we off? Do we need to make any sort of corrections? It's the thermometer for, are we going to make it?
Well, that's exactly right. And their fear was they wouldn't make it if they went to Switzerland. And I'm like, looky here. So we showed them if they spent $20,000 in their case, what it meant for them is when they got to the end of their life, instead of having like $3.7 million when they were 100 years old, they were going to have like $3.55 million instead. What good does another $150,000 do you when you're dead or when you're 100? But what good could an enriching trip to Switzerland be for you today? If it's not Switzerland for you, maybe it's Mickey Mouse. Maybe it's taking the grandkids to Disney World. I really want to encourage you to invest in building those memories with your family. I think that's the most important part of retirement. And we want to help you do that at Wealth Care. So I'll tell you what, if you'll pick up the phone and call us at 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500, we will sit down and help you design a retirement income plan to be sure you get income all the way to 100. We want you to be able to be confident in the choices that you make and the steps that you take. We'll look at your taxes, reduce them as much as possible, maybe even get them to zero. We'll help you protect some of your principal so when the stock market goes down, you don't have to catch your breath and be afraid. We'll even look at long-term care and talk about how to prepare for that. But the first step is calling us. So pick up the phone and call 417-200-3500. 417-200-3500 and just say, hey, I want to sit with a retirement advisor, and we'll get you scheduled in just a few days and have an opportunity to do that.
And once again, get a copy of Barry's book. It's also called Watts on Wealth, as is the radio show, as is the TV show. And just text the word book, B-O-O-K. You can text that right now to 417-200-3500. Matt, thanks for joining us. Matt, can you stick around for a while? Are you going to go do some Medicare things? Would you like to be with us for the next segment of the show?
Sorry, Ralph, I've got to run.
Got to run. Well, don't you run. Stick with us. Barry Watts will be back along with me for the final part of our show in just a moment here. Don't go away.
Barry Watts makes retirement planning easy with his kit, which includes a retirement income planning booklet and key information on taxes, Social Security, and income. Request your wealth care kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in Watts on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealthcare Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through Wealthcare Asset Management, LLC.
Retirement planning made simple with Barry Watts. His kit includes a retirement income planning booklet, plus information on taxes, Social Security, and more. Get your wealth care kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
Welcome back in. Barry Watts on the radio right here on KSGF this Sunday morning. This is Ralph Hipp in our final part of the show. Hope you're enjoying the show, and we'll call or text the word visit. Call right away to set your own appointment with Barry Watts. Well, Barry, I hit 71 recently. I believe I'm 10 years ahead of you, but a guy who's way ahead of both of us is about to join the club of retirees. Good old Warren Buffett. He said at the stockholders meeting, which they televise, by the way. He's so popular and all the important business they do. He said it right there on television. I'm retiring and leaving at the end of the year. And did you see that? And what were your thoughts about Warren leaving the workforce?
Well, what a shame it is that the Warren had to work all the way to 94 and you got to retire at 69. But he probably didn't save as much in his 401k is the problem. So that's why Warren is a little bit late.
Yeah.
So, at one time, Warren Buffett was the richest man in the world. But back in about 2008, he started giving it away.
Yeah.
He had $62 billion when he started. And he started giving it away. And what would you do with $62 billion? I can't even begin to think about that. It wouldn't change my life a bit because it's not like you can eat more. It's not like you can live in a nicer house with better air conditioning. That's one of the interesting things is beyond a certain level, more money doesn't help. But Warren had $62 billion, so he started giving it away. Now, his company is called Berkshire Hathaway, and that company owns about 2,000 different businesses. Ralph, do you know any of the businesses that Berkshire Hathaway owns?
Well, one of them, and I go by it all the time, Nebraska Furniture Mart. He put Nebraska in there. I know NFM is one of the companies, and is Geico one of them with the little, what is it? He's a Geico gecko.
Yep, he owns the gecko. That's right.
Dairy Queen, he owns that and can stop in for a
Dairy
cone.
Queen. That's one of his favorite places to go and eat.
Okay.
And you mentioned Nebraska Furniture Market. It's interesting. I'm going to be at Nebraska Furniture Market next week because I happen to have reason to be up in Kansas City. And when I'm there, we're looking for I need a rug for my office conference room, which, by the way, is called the Table Rock Room.
Oh, nice.
We've named all of our conference rooms after lakes. So we have Table Rock, we have Taney Como, we have Lake Stockton, and we have Lake Pomme de Terre. Those are the 4 conference rooms that we have in our offices
lake room.
over
Yeah.
Battlefield and 65. Mine is Table Rock. That is the biggest conference room, by the way. And so I need a rug for that room, and I'm going to go look at Nebraska Furniture Market and see what I can pick up there because I haven't been able to find what I need here in Springfield, unfortunately.
All right, well,
We're talking
come
about
on up.
Warren.
Yeah,
And
let me also encourage you, Barry, when you go to NFM, which they call NFM, go to C's Candy on the lower level, and he owns that too.
That's true. The only, the only things you left out were Fruit of the Loom. I'll wear those underwear while I'm there, maybe.
Right.
And he owns the railroads, Burlington, Northern Santa Fe.
He does.
That's another one of Warren's businesses. Now, here's an interesting thing about Warren Buffett. Today, he lives in the same house that he bought in 1958. Wow, that goes back a long way. Now, it's interesting. He paid $31,500 for that house. And I've got to tell you, it was a very nice house in 1958. My parents bought the house that I grew up in 1961, probably. And I don't remember, this would be an interesting conversation to have with them. I don't remember what they gave for that house, but it was something like $3,500 or $4,000. It was one of those Jim Walters homes that you see sometimes at the side of the road. They're selling these pre-built houses. So Mom and Dad poured some foundation walls on Grandpa's farm, and they drove one of those Jim Walters homes down and set it on the foundation. And that's the little house that I grew up in on the farm. It's still right there, just south of Galena on what used to be Highway 13. It may be 413 now. I'm not sure what they call it. But when you go across the Rayleigh Creek Bridge on the left, that whole valley there was the valley I grew up in. Unfortunately, it's gone from being a beautiful farm to a strip mine. And they've mined all of the topsoil off of it. And so it's lost a lot of its beauty. But we're talking about Warren. Warren bought this house for $31,500. And that would be the equivalent to buying a $340,000 house today. So here's the question. Back in 1958, if we had invested Warren's $31,500 in the S&P 500, what would it be worth today? If you'd put that into the S&P 500 today, it would be worth $46 million. But here's the kicker. If you had invested that $31,500 in Berkshire Hathaway, Warren's company, today it would be worth not $46 million, but $7 billion.
Oh, my.
Time is your greatest friend in many aspects of life, and investment is one of those. Give it enough time and it'll work out. Warren's 94. He's given it a lot of time. You see, many of us, Ralph, are too jumpy. We jump from job to job. We jump from spouse to spouse. From town to town, things aren't going right in this town. I'll move to the next town. Here's what I want to say to you. Settle down and plow a long, straight furrow. Stick with the woman you married. You don't have to stick with your career path, but stick with your job ethic and your willingness to go to work and keep doing the work and educate yourself, improve your situation, but plow a long, straight furrow. And you'll be amazed what you can accomplish with your life, like my business partner, Warren Buffett. I say he's my business partner. You know why that is, Ralph?
Well, how come?
Because I own some stock in Berkshire Hathaway.
All right.
So Warren and I do that together. He's run that business since 1965. It's had a 5,502% return in the time that Warren has run it. And now that he's retiring and coming along to the end of his life, I remember in the late 90s, around 2000, Y2K time, people thought he'd lost his mojo because he missed out on the .com thing. Warren didn't really buy into the whole tech thing too much at that time. But today he's got plenty of money, and he says that he's given 99.5% of his wealth to charity when he goes. So there's a lot to be learned from Warren. In fact, he has given us some advice. Do you have time for me to talk about Warren's advice?
We do, Barry. We sure do. Yeah.
All right. Well, first piece of advice that Warren gave is he said this. He said, when you're young, focus not on what you're being paid to do, but on who is hiring you. Who is hiring you? Because the people you're going to be around at work every day are the people who are going to make you better. They're going to be the people who are going to open doors for you and teach you things you didn't know. So don't focus on where the best job is. Focus on who is hiring you, because you're going to take on the habits of the people that are around you. Second thing that he said to do is find something you would rather do, you would want to do if you didn't need money. So basically something you would be willing to volunteer to do. Somebody told me once when I was like 18, 19 years old, his name was Larry Case. He was the Missouri State FFA advisor at that time, Dr. Case was. He went on to be the national FFA advisor. And funny story about that, I was in Hawaii one time having dinner, and across the restaurant walks nobody but Larry Case. So I hadn't seen him in 40 years. It's like, Larry, what are you doing here?
But instantly you recognized it was Larry.
Oh, I knew who it was.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Exactly right.
And
Well,
what did you talk about?
Well, we just caught up for, 3 minutes over 40 years. But what Larry told me when I was 19, I always remembered it, was this. He said, find a job that you'd rather do than go on vacation. That was pretty good advice. That's really what Warren was saying. Find
That is
something
good.
you would
Yeah.
do if you didn't need the money. Because happiness reduces job stress. And it's one of the keys to longevity. And Warren is 94. So I think he has something to say about that. Here was another thing that Warren said that I thought was pretty good advice. He said, learn to say no. Learn to say no. Figure out your bullseye and work on it. Your bullseye, not somebody else's bullseye. Figure out your bullseye and work on it, and let all other things fall away. Really successful people learn to say no to almost everything else. So that's a little advice from Warren Buffett. Advice that helps us as we build our life and our business, and we want to share that advice for other people who come to us at the Wealth Care Corporation. So, Ralph, what we do is we help people retire and retire confidently. We've got a process called the 6 Steps to Retirement Confidence that we would like to unfold for our listeners today. Do you want to tell them how they can get to experience that?
Well, sure. Just give them a call, and you can, on this Sunday, as you're getting ready for church and listening and watching our TV show before and after this radio show, we encourage you to text the word visit to set up your time with Barry, 417-200-3500. And if you're going to see Barry, you might as well get the book. I've got it, and it's great. And, friends, like Warren Buffett, a lot of Barry's wisdom is so simple. Life is complicated. And how much time do we have on the planet? But to at least figure it out, Warren and Barry, just some very simple concepts, and Barry outlines those in his book, Watts on Wealth. And you can text the word book at that same number, 417-200-3500 to get your book. So I always say between reading Watts on Wealth, watching Watts on Wealth, listening to Watts on Wealth, you're going to be almost as wise as Barry and Warren Buffett, aren't you, Barry?
Well,
we'd be on the road.
Wiser. Wisdom's a funny thing, Ralph.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of wisdom in people who aren't educated necessarily, or it's a different kind of education.
Sure.
And it's a different kind of wisdom. That's where I appreciate the wisdom in old farmers who, they may not be able to cipher quite as good as the folks who just graduated from the university, but they can look at a cow and weigh her with your eyes, and they can tell you what she weighs and what she'll bring, and they can tell you what's wrong with her and how to grow the grass. So I like sitting with the old timers who know how to think, and hopefully 32 years in this business has turned me into an old timer who knows how to think and how to help people with their retirement so they can approach it confidently, knowing they're not by themselves. That's our mission at the Wealth Care Corporation.
Barry, any Bible verse or any other final thoughts you have for our friends listening in before we wrap things up here?
Well, Ralph, you asked me to quote a Bible verse. I don't know if we have time for that because I've got so many favorite verses. But at the end of the day, I would say this. I do confidently believe that God is for you and he's on your side and he wants to help you and he wants to be in relationship with you. And it's our sin that we have that separates us from God. That's what the Bible teaches very clearly. Yeah. And God has a solution for that. And the solution was he sent Jesus to die on the cross in our place, to pay the price for our sins.
He did.
So that we don't have to bear that burden on our own shoulders and on our own heart and life. And ultimately, so we don't have to be separated from God in hell because Jesus took that separation for us on his shoulders. So I would encourage everyone to begin to follow Jesus Christ. If you will hand the reins of your life over to him, Jesus, take the wheel. Isn't that what the country song says?
There is one, yeah.
If you just let Jesus take the wheel.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, everything's going to turn out all right. It may not always be easy. It isn't always easy, but it will always be good. I've lived for 62 years that way. You can trust what I'm telling you.
Well, we love the way Barry talks, and you'll love meeting with him and talking with him, so get with Barry. And friends, that'll do it for our show. I'm delighted to say I'm Ralph Hipp, Barry's radio host, and thanks for joining us. Barry, you have a good week and a good week to our friends listening in.
Thank you, Ralph.
And have a good week. Bye for now.
Thank you for stopping by What's on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. And join us again next week for What's on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.